Vanity Fair is calling it the trial of the century. We have officially kicked off the Girardi criminal trial. Tom Girardi appeared in court this week. The jury selection process has begun, and today we're going to take it all back to the very beginning to see how we ever got here.
I was going to hold that man's hand till he died.
Disbarred LA attorney Tom Girardi.
Once portrayed as a man of power.
Tom Girardi is competent to stand trial.
He's facing charges of embezzling more than $15 million from his clients.
If convicted, the maximum sentence is 20 years in federal prison.
Everybody kept saying her lifestyle was funded off of all of these clients.
Yeah, that's easy to say. So was every other lawyer that worked there.
Welcome on in, everybody. Welcome on in, welcome on in, welcome on in. I hope you have your notebooks ready. We're going to recap everything and how this whole embezzlement scandal began, or I guess wire fraud scandal, criminal trial, however you want to define it. We are diving into all of it today. It is a $15 million wire fraud criminal trial featuring Tom Girardi, Christopher Camone, David Lira, Erika Jayne. Let's recap what happened in court this week at the beginning of the trial, and then we'll take it all back to the beginning to see how we ever got here. All right. This will be, obviously we've done a number of deep dives over the last, 3 going on 4 years now. So we will recap it. Obviously, there are more deeper details that you can rewatch, but I'm just going to catch you up to speed. So trial began. Now, also want to note there are 2 trials, right? So the one we're going to be discussing today, the one that started this week, started on Tuesday, August 6th. This does not include the charges that were filed against Tom Girardi and his son-in-law in Illinois, and that is separate, and that trial will be happening in 2025. So this is only the California case with his CFO, the chief financial officer, Christopher Camone, who serves as a co-defendant with Tom Girardi. They are not appearing in court together. So we just started with Tom. So Tom's being charged in connection with 4 different cases. So there are 4 counts of wire fraud that he's being charged with. And these cases range from 2010 all the way to 2020. So it's a decade of what we're going to be talking about in court. And this is where he allegedly withheld large sums of client settlement funds. So an example that was given in court was there was a case where Tom won $53 million and he told the client that they only won $7 million. Now, obviously, even if you factor in attorney's fees and the percentage that Tom's entitled to, obviously that's still not, $7 million in comparison to 53, that's super shady. So the prosecution is describing Tom Girardi as using his client funds as his own personal bank account. When you actually dig into the financials, it's all messy, right? There are seemingly shell companies, there were trust fund accounts, there were all these different credit card bills that were being paid out. So all the money was mixed together, which is what has made the financial, the forensic accounting of the financials and all the books so challenging, because it's well, whose money belongs to who? Because that's the other thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. They think every penny that came into Girardi Keese is stolen money. That's not true, because there are attorney's fees that he's entitled to. There is a 40% commission of that settlement money that Girardi Keese is entitled to. So you have to break down, okay, if the settlement was $53 million, 40% of that is first you have to deduct the fees, you have to deduct costs, and then you can take the 40% commission on top of that 53, or on top of those costs and expenses. And then whatever's left, that remaining 60%, then would go to the client. So a portion of the money, and this is why it's made it so challenging in terms of, whose money was it? Was it part of the percentage that Tom was entitled to take, or did he take more? How much more? What accounted those fees? What accounted those costs? Do we have actual receipts, proof, timeline, screenshots, fucking everything to prove that? That's what has to get woven through in all of the financial documents that were being run by Christopher Camone. He's the CFO. So prosecution has accused Tom of just using all of this client money as his own personal bank account without any sort of repercussions, and then giving them the runaround before having to pay them out what they're actually entitled to. The defense tried to throw it back onto Christopher Camone, the CFO, claiming that Camone was the one that was committing the fraud, and this was all unbeknownst to Tom Girardi. They argued that Tom's age and his health affected him as well, that he wasn't as on top of it as he had been in the past because he was getting older and because he was in mental decline. Therefore, he was trusting Christopher Camone to keep track of these things because he was no longer able to keep track of them. So he put a lot of faith in Camone. The prosecution says that it was basically a decade of chaos that Girardi Keese was running this mess. And so that's kind of where we're at. Those are how they opened up with their arguments. Tom and Camone have both pled not guilty. Camone's trial is still yet to come. We've just begun with Tom Girardi's trial. We began with the jury selection process just to make sure that none of the 12 jurors that will be sitting throughout the trial have any sort of conflict of interest, right? They're not Housewives fans. They're not Erika fans. They're not, they weren't taken advantage of by an attorney that may cloud their judgment to unfairly judge Tom Girardi. You have to make sure that the jury is completely unbiased and is able to look at things objectively. So that's a brief little synopsis of what went down in court this week. Let's take it to the top and get back to how we even got here. So House of Cards began falling back in 2020 after Erika Jayne filed for divorce from Tom Girardi on election day. Remember, we got the news. We were like, what? It's election day? Like, everybody was so fixated on the election that nobody was really paying attention to Erika filing for divorce. So it kind of, I believe, were hoping it would just fall under the radar, and the Bravo world was shooketh. I remember even doing an emergency episode that day being like, holy shit, Erika Jayne's leaving Tom Girardi. Who would have ever thought we would have seen the day? Then attorney Jay Edelson came out and he called this a sham divorce as he filed a lawsuit against them in Chicago, first of many, right? Because this was kind of the tipping point. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, the card that brought the house of cards tumbling down. So Edelson was accusing Tom and Erika of trying to hide and conceal assets in their divorce. So the divorce has since been put on pause since all of these legal issues have come up. There was a Lion Air plane crash that happened, and it was there were some clients that Tom and Edelson PC, which is Jay Edelson's firm, together, Edelson PC and Girardi Keese were representing this group of clients. So in that case, there was about $2 million of settlement money that had not been paid out by Girardi Keese, which initially raised some red flags with Edelson because he's like, hold on, we're both representing these clients. They haven't gotten their money. Why have they not gotten their money? So this is the case that's commonly referred to as the orphans and widows, right? I hate saying that, but that's just how we know them, the orphans and widows. But and it's because the clients involved had spouses and their spouses and children of people that had passed away or that were lost in this Lion Air flight. So in addition to that case, in addition to the case of the orphans and widows, we also have another case involving Joe Ruigomez. So this was also happening in 2020 with them fighting for their settlement money. So Joe Ruigomez suffered burns all over his body. This was from a gas explosion. I believe there was about $11 million that was still owed and unpaid to the Ruigomez family. So Joe and his mother, Kathy, ended up taking Tom Girardi to court. They got an order from a judge to issue the balance due to secure their debt. They became a secured creditor. That's the difference. So secured creditors are at the top in the front of the line. They're at the top of the list when it comes to payouts from the trustee or from the bankruptcy trustee. And then you have the unsecured creditors, which are basically people with accusations of needing money, but they have no secured bonds. They have nothing that can actually prove or entitle them to this money because it hasn't been before a judge. Those are the cases we don't know of. I believe it was 500 million in total that they were estimating of money that was possibly due. That's an estimate of just claims that were made against people who say that they are entitled to money. Again, a lot of those are unsecured creditors, so they don't have an actual court order. Some of them are. Some of them are just invoices that were never paid. We'll have to see how that unfolds. This lawsuit specifically, though, is only, I believe, what was it, 15? Yeah, it was only 15 million. The one in California, at least. So there was the 11 million. Tom agreed to make payments to the family, but I believe he started to fall behind on those payments, which again is when the house started crumbling down. This then led into Edelson accusing them of a sham divorce, and everybody looking at Erika, and this was all being filmed for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills at the time. So these are the two cases that most people are the most familiar with. That's the orphans and widows case and the burn victim case. Again, I hate referring to them as that, but that's just how people commonly know them. The Rui Gomez family you will recognize from the original Hulu documentary, The Housewife and the Hustler. Not the cheap part 2, not the sequel that they put out. That one was low budget, but the first one that initially broke the case, and they featured the Rui Gomez family, and Joe got to tell his story in that documentary. So a bankruptcy trustee was then put in charge of the Girardi Keese finances, and a bankruptcy trustee was then put in charge of Tom Girardi's personal finances as they tried to clean up this entire mess. Then they brought on attorney Ronald Richards. He was hired as special counsel to investigate Tom's wife, Erika Girardi, aka Erika Jayne, to see what money may have been given to her. So his job was to figure out what Erika was paid, what she left the marriage with that wasn't entitled to her, that may have been entitled to Girardi Keese. I don't believe he did a very good job of that because he was let go without any real findings that we didn't already know going into it. So the trustee discovered that there was a total of $20 million that was paid debt on behalf of Erika Jayne's company, EJ Global. This is where people talk about him transferring $20 million into her bank account. That is a false statement. Tom Girardi never transferred money into Erika Jayne's bank account. He never transferred money into Erika Girardi's bank account. He never transferred money into the EJ Global bank account that we know of. Okay. This was an accumulation of credit card bills that was paid using funds from Girardi Keese. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that these are client funds, but it means that they are Girardi Keese funds. And we're now seeing that Girardi and Camone were possibly the two that were mixing up all the money. So nobody knows. That's like saying you have, $50 that is entitled to Girardi Keese, and then you have, or actually, no, we have $25 that belongs to Tom Girardi, $25 that belongs to client A, $25 that belongs to client B, and then $25 that belongs to client C. And so when you come in and you take 25, 25, 25, 25, you cash it out, you throw all the cash on the table, and then you mix up all the cash, and then you start spending all of that mixed cash. How do you then determine whose $25 was used for which item, right? So this is where, like, when the earrings come up, I mean, the earrings are a little different because we'll get into the earrings in a bit, but that's why it's so confusing because, well, Tom Girardi was technically entitled to 25 of that collective 100, but so were these 3 clients. So how do we know if that $10 that was spent, does that belong to Tom Girardi? Does that belong to client A, client B, or client C? We don't know because all the money just got thrown on the table and shuffled up. So nobody knows which dollar belongs to which person. That's why it's also making challenging. It also makes it challenging for which of the clients gets paid out first and who was entitled to a payout. And if there's no longer $100 on the table, how do we then divide what is left and who takes precedent? That's what's made all of this so confusing is everything is just all mixed up, right? So when it comes to the $20 million, this was not money that was directly given to Erika or her company. It was a credit card balance over the course of 12 years that accumulated with a grand total of $20 million. So you divide that down, and that's about 2-ish million per year, 1 to 2 million that was spent in expenses for EJ Global per year. Now, in the grand scheme of things, when Tom Girardi is bringing in one single settlement for $53 million, and that's only one settlement, and he's cashing out multiple settlements per year, then that really brings into question Is 20 million over the course of 12 years really as substantial as people are thinking that it is? Because if that's all that Erika got was 20 million, then where did the rest of the money go? Right? Who got the rest of it? If there's a 53 million, we're just taking these figures for examples, right? But if there was a $53 million settlement in 1 year, 53 million came in. He said that the client was only getting 7 million. So that's 53, 52, 51, 50, 49, 48, 47, 46. So that's what, 45, 46 million dollars that was kept for Girardi Keese in one single year. Erika maybe got 1 to 2 of that from that one single year, not to mention any other settlements that came in that year. So where did the rest of the money go? That's the biggest question that everybody has. Because like I said, the money wasn't given to Erika. It was a credit card balance over the course of 12 years, right? 12 years of expenses that were then lumped in together. And then they determined, okay, well, in total, EJ Global benefited $20 million. Now, Erika claims that she never had access to any of the finances. She claims that she was simply given a credit card and that's all she had to live off of. The credit card statements went directly to the bookkeeper at Girardi Keese. We now know of him as the CFO, Christopher Camone. So it kind of seems like that's how a lot of people were operating, right? There was an Amex, and the Amex bills just came straight to Girardi Keese, and the bookkeeper was the one that was helping to divide everything and pay everything off. But nobody actually was looking at the actual books. It seems like Tom Girardi and Christopher Camone were the only two that had access to those books. So now, on the tax statements, though, Girardi Keese wrote that these credit card balance payments were loans. And so this $20 million was an accumulation of a variety of loans that was paid out to EJ Global each year. So Girardi Keese was loaning lots of money out to EJ Global, which is what they were claiming, amongst many other companies that were also getting loans from Girardi Keese. And not only getting loans from Girardi Keese, but there were other companies that were giving Girardi Keese loans. So we're using that term loans loosely. And so mixing up all the money was like, oh, well, we loaned you this money. And if the money, we don't see it again, then we can just write that off as a loss on the books, right? We loaned $2 million to EJ Global. The investment didn't last, so we ended up losing that money. And so we can write it off as a loss, which, is you write it off as a loan to this company. This company then spends it on their expenses. So they can say, oh, we made expenses. There was no profit. Girardi Keese can then see, oh. So, I mean, it was kind of like just funneling money down the drain. Again, whether that money was client money or not has yet to be determined because of the analogy that I gave with all the money on the table and it all gets mixed up, right? Whose $25 was spent? So that saying, of all the money that was mixed, there were funds that came directly from client trust accounts, which is a big no-no. When you're an attorney and you're representing your clients, that money is only for them, and there is no circumstance in which an attorney can take that money to pay for any sort of personal expenses or even business expenses. Like, that money is entitled to the client. So, for example, the biggest case that everybody knows about was the infamous diamond earrings that belonged to Erika Jayne. So at the beginning of their marriage, Tom Girardi gifted Erika a pair of diamond earrings. Years later, it was reported that the diamond earrings were stolen in a home invasion. This then, I believe this was 2006, if memory serves me correctly. Home invasion, earrings stolen. This then prompted Tom to purchase a replacement pair of earrings that costed $750,000. However, it was later discovered that the money that was used to pay for that replacement pair of earrings came out of a client trust fund that was supposed to go to clients that were involved in a lawsuit against Resolin, which is a drug that was believed to cause liver injury. Now, Tom Girardi was representing those clients. Tom Girardi collected a settlement on behalf of those clients. That money went into this trust fund. And then when Tom was purchasing this pair of earrings, he had the money pulled directly from that client trust fund account. Now, whether or not he already took his commission has yet to be determined. However, the point being, you take your commission and then that trust fund is only for the clients. You're not supposed to not take your cut and then just pull your cut from the trust fund to pay for whatever you want to pay for. Not only that, but then it would be weird because you're paying for a personal gift for your wife that's supposed to come from your company funds, which also is unkosher. So that's where the earrings and the trust fund get messy. Now, the trustee tried to claim ownership of the earrings. However, Erika's legal team battled them in court over who actually is the true owner of the earrings, since the earrings were a personal gift. They argued that despite how the money was spent or how the earrings were purchased, that responsibility doesn't fall on Erika, as she's not the one who spent the money. She's just the one that received the gift. And because it was a gift to her, that's her personal property. So she's not the one that handled that transaction. She's not the one that spent the money. She was never an employee or an officer of Girardi Keese. So the legal team argued, well, we have no part of that sale. All we know is this was a gift that was given to my client. My client then owns this as personal property that belongs to her. How the money was spent or how we got here is irrelevant. You have to deal with the people that handled that transaction. Ultimately, the trustee ended up auctioning the earrings off. They went for about, I think it was $200,000, and they were purchased by dun 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 dun, former special counsel to the trustee, Ronald Richards. So not only did Ronald Richards previously work for the trustee as special counsel, but he also purchased the earrings that the trustee had auctioned off. Ronald purchased them and then went on Instagram with his wife, and they posted photos wearing the earrings, boasting about them then getting those earrings. So the earrings never went to any clients, okay? And that 200,000 that was raised by the trustee through that auction sale, we don't know where that money went, right? The trustee has their own sole discretion to take their own portion that they're entitled to, but has their own sole discretion to determine any money that comes in, who gets paid first. Now, there's a much bigger conversation about, well, a lot of the secured creditors that are asking for money from Girardi Keese or that are claiming that they are owed money by Girardi Keese, a lot of them are bank lenders. A lot of those bank lenders are personal friends of Tom Girardi. So it appears, I'm not making any accusations, I'm just saying it appears that there are people that were close with Tom Girardi that are asking for money from the trustee, and the trustee is then paying out that money because technically those are creditors. That's like me, for example, not in direct comparison, not making any allegations, just saying, for example, that's like me going to my friend who I can say, hey, can I borrow $20? And the friend says, yeah, here's $20. Then you later find out that my money's a hot mess. And so now that, we're trying to divide where my money is supposed to go, my friend then comes back and says, hey, well, I loaned Zach $20. And when I gave him that $20, he signed a contract saying he was going to pay me back plus interest. So then my friend is entitled, as somebody that has a contract, that's I agreed to pay them back when my money's being liquidated by a bankruptcy trustee. That bankruptcy trustee then has at the top of the list, oh, this $20 is owed to Zach's friend because there's an actual contract in place, and Zach made a legal agreement to pay this money back. And a lot of that is kind of what's happening right now, from depending on how you look at it. Now, when it comes to the earrings, they were auctioned off. Ronald Richards purchased them. The trustee got their $200K. An appellate judge later determined, however, that the trustee did not prove that they had any true ownership of those earrings and did not have the right to auction them off. So they auctioned those earrings off prematurely before proving that Girardi Keese was the true owner of those earrings. Essentially, depending on how you look at it, it was a win for Erika Jayne, who's claiming that she's the true owner of those earrings. She did not, however, get them back. She is not getting them back. They were sold off at auction. The true ownership of the earrings, though, has yet to be proven. Now, this is also not a cut and dry case because the lawsuit that the settlement money was awarded from was a lawsuit from back in 2004. So obviously there is a statute of limitations that can come into play here. The clients whose funds were used to purchase those earrings. They have also not fought for the value of those earrings. They don't have a secured debt in court. So there are a lot of things that are a factor, right? So it really comes down to, well, then who do the earrings belong to? Do they belong to Girardi Keese because Girardi Keese is the one that purchased them? Do they belong to the clients because the client money was what was used to make the purchase of the earrings? Do they belong to Erika? And if it was a gift, is she entitled to keep that gift without having to turn it over? Because as her legal team defended, how the earrings were purchased is not up to her. It was a gift. She was given a piece of property. That piece of property is then hers. She's entitled to keep it. And a lot of people I know at the time were like, just give up the earrings to pay the orphans and widows. Let's be very clear. The earrings would never pay the orphans and widows because they weren't related to the Lion Air case. They were related to the Reslin case. The Reslin case clients are not asking for this money. They have not reached out. They have not sued Girardi Keese. And again, there is a statute of limitations. Where these Reslin clients are, I don't know. There were many of them. If you decide to take back the earrings and then try to split that up amongst all of these different clients, how much do they actually get? You break it down, it's not very much. They're not getting much money if they were to go that route. And are they even still entitled to that money, or does statute of limitations put a cap on that? And I believe they've capped out. Last time I checked, I don't believe they have a case. So then who do the earrings belong to? If they no longer belong to the clients, because the clients never claimed ownership within the time that they were supposed to claim ownership because they didn't know. If they didn't know and they're not entitled to those earrings, then do they belong to Girardi Keese because Girardi Keese made the purchase, or do they belong to the person that was gifted the earrings? That's the big mess in court. So lots of factors to weigh in when it comes to the earrings. It's not as cut and dry as people would like to think that it is. It's not as cut and dry as Crystal Minkoff would like to think that it is. Just give up the earrings. It pays back the clients. It actually doesn't. It goes back to paying Tom Girardi's personal debts or Girardi Keese's debts, but does it go back to paying any of the former clients, or as people like to call them, the victims? No, that's kind of the reality that most people don't realize. So Erika herself has then been named in multiple lawsuits related to Girardi Keese. Ultimately, most of those cases against her have been dismissed. There is another case against her currently from Marco Marco. That does not directly involve Girardi Keese. That's the case that she, if you remember, I believe it was that same season that all of this broke. She talked about wearing a wire in a case for the FBI. That was the case that was being referred to. And that is where, to briefly summarize that, that's not in my notes, but to briefly summarize that, it's not directly related to Girardi Keese. It's a separate lawsuit with somebody suing Erika directly. And it's a designer. Marco Marco is claiming that they made a bunch of outfits for Erika and they were billing Erika's Amex. They were not providing invoices for those costumes or those outfits that they were designing for her. So the charges were not accounted for. I believe it was like $800,000 that was charged to the Amex. I believe it was about 800 actually. That was charged to Erika's Amex without any invoices being submitted. So Erika then called up Amex and said, "Hey, these charges are fraudulent. They are not giving me any billing for these charges." Therefore, Amex reversed the charges, and then the FBI investigated, and Marco Marco was arrested because obviously $800,000 is not chump change. You do see this in part 2 of the Housewife and the Hustler documentary by Hulu, where Marco Marco kind of tells their sad story about, how Erika Jayne ruined their business, even though if you look at the number of high profile clients that they have, it's hard to believe that Erika Jayne ruined their business. But that's what will be playing out in court, and whether or not they're entitled to any money from Erika. It's possible that they have now said that even though they didn't have invoices at the time, and even though they did admit to accidentally overcharging, I think it was like 100 or 200,000. They're like, "Oh yeah, there was an overage of like 100 or 200 grand. Sorry about that." And that's where she wore the wire, and she got them to admit that, which is when the FBI came in and arrested this designer, because they did admit that, I believe, in an email. There were text message exchanges, and obviously it was on the wire. So again, we'll have to see how that plays out in court. They may be able to provide proof of these invoices and of these charges and be able to fight for that. So we'll have to wait and see how that ultimately plays out. But that is ongoing, but that's separate from Girardi Keese. So Tom Girardi was finally disbarred in 2022 following the initial claims made by Edelson PC in 2020. Though since then, Tom has been in an elderly care facility and he's been living there ever since. I believe there was like a paparazzi that caught him one time and tried to get him to like talk on camera. So he's been in the old folks home ever since. Now, in November of 2022, the Girardi Keese CFO, Christopher Camone, was arrested in Baltimore on wire fraud charges. He was accused of running a $10 million side fraud. So this is outside of what Tom Girardi's been accused of, but then there's an additional $10 million that he's being charged of running on his own, of scraping his own money for his own keepings. Now, at the time that he was arrested, he was actually in the process of selling his multiple properties here in the US. Multiple properties here in the US. He was trying to sell them. I'm not accusing him of liquidating his assets here in the United States, but when you own multiple properties and then you start to sell them, does start to seem just a little fishy, in my opinion. And not only that, but he'd recently just purchased a property in the Bahamas. Wow, what a coinkydink. And that's actually where he had been spending his time recently. Prior to his arrest, he was living in the Bahamas. After all of the scandal broke in 2020, Christopher Camone ends up selling a lot of his properties and moving to the Bahamas. He says it's just a coincidence. What a coinkydink, right? Now, they caught him because he had happened to just return to the United States. I believe he came to see, I think it was his sister. He came to visit family. And so that's why he was in Baltimore. He was at the airport getting ready to return to the Bahamas where they arrested him. So he was arrested at the airport. Imagine thinking like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm in the clear. Saw my family. I'm out. Peace. And then next thing you know it, boom, arrested. In February 2023, that's when Tom Girardi, Christopher Camone, and Tom Girardi's son-in-law, former Girardi Keese attorney, David Lira, they were charged with stealing $18 million from clients out in Chicago. So this is separate from the trial that's currently going on in California. There are 4 counts of wire fraud that Tom's charged with here in California. The Chicago stuff, completely different case. The Chicago trial is set to begin on March 3rd, 2025. As of right now, that's the official start date. Now, there are other questions related to the California State Bar, and Tom's relationship to some of the members of the California State Bar. He was very close with one of them and would vacation with him and had a very close relationship, because a lot of people have asked, well, how did the California State Bar not catch on to this? Were there not people that were filing complaints? And then you find out that Tom was making donations and that Tom was buddy with a lot of these people. And I think the LA Times has tried to present that like he was buying people in the California State Bar. So, there are also accusations of him buying off judges and bar members. So that's a whole mess. We also know of appellate judge Trisha A. Bigelow. I like to call her Gigolo Bigelow. She was a judge that Tom was having an alleged affair with. It was found out that he paid her $300,000 from a client trust fund. He gave that money to her, in addition to a variety of gifts that she was given, including a beachfront condo that he purchased for her in Santa Monica. I believe Erika Jayne also claimed that he purchased a new butt for Gigolo Bigelow, which may have been part of that 300,000 or maybe separate from that 300,000. I'm not entirely sure. But like, here's the thing. You can pull back the earrings and auction off the earrings, but like, how do you auction off a new butt? At this point, it's not even a brand new butt. It's a used butt. The butt's been used. How do you auction that off? And who does that belong to? Does the butt belong to the clients from the client trust fund, or does the butt belong to the trustee? Or because it was a gift to Trisha Bigelow, does Judge Trisha Bigelow get to keep her new butt? Miss Booty rocking everywhere. We don't know who's rocking that booty. Who does it belong to? Because if they can find an owner of the booty, they can find an owner of the earrings. And so if Trisha Bigelow gets to keep her booty, then I think Erika Jayne should probably keep her earrings, because Trisha Bigelow can't take the booty out and give it on back. She can, however, give up the beach house, but I don't know if she has. We'll see. So yeah, there are a lot of different people, many different people that benefited from this alleged, I believe they were calling it a Ponzi scheme at one point, but this alleged embezzlement from Girardi Keese, this scheme that was cooking, a lot of people benefited from it. And again, when you look at how big these figures are, a single settlement was $53 million. And then you look at, everybody wants to focus on Erika. And that's the only reason I keep bringing Erika up, is because everybody's focus wants to be on Erika when they don't realize there are so many other players that, included here. So when I say, where did the money go? Some of it went here, some of it went there, some of it went to this person, some of it went to Trisha Bigelow's new butt, the Bigelow booty. Now, it's also worth noting, because a lot of things that I'm sure I've revealed in today's episode are not things that get reported by the press, but it's also worth noting that the Lion Air clients, the orphans and widows, they have been paid their $2 million that they were owed. They were paid out through Edelson PC's insurance. So the orphans and widows got the money that they were entitled to. Now, Edelson back in 2022 did file a new lawsuit where he's seeking $55 million in damages. That lawsuit, I believe, has also been halted, like Erika Jayne's divorce, by the criminal charges against Tom, Kimon, and Lyra. We'll have to see how that all plays out. But I mean, man, imagine not paying $2 million and then you get slapped with a lawsuit for $55 million. From $2 million to 55, that's a steep jump. But I mean, that's kind of standard, though. When it comes to lawsuits, you always want to aim really high. You're likely going to fall somewhere a little lower, but you typically want to add on punitive damages and, fees and all that stuff. So you don't always get what you're asking for. Typically, there's a settlement where you fall in the middle. So I understand Edelson aiming high, but I just think $55 million is a very ambitious goal. So yeah, there's a lot going on here, but that's basically a brief to catch you up on where we are and how we got here. All right, God forbid, I'm a little scared. Let's look at the live chat and see if anybody has any questions. Yes, let's see. Wanda Lee says the investigator for the trust who bought the earrings for his wife is a little sketchy himself too, in my opinion. I mean, yeah. Is the law firm bankrupt now? Well, there's a bankruptcy trustee. So the bankruptcy trustee is trying to liquidate assets and pay off creditors. I don't know how far in that they've gotten. I do know, and we know this based off of what Kimberly Archie said when she was on this podcast, the Rui Gomez family has also been receiving payments for the money that they were entitled to as well. So they're working with the trustee to get their money. So orphans and widows have been paid. Rui Gomez family is being paid. Everybody else, all the other creditors are also now, there are settlements that are being made. So we'll have to see how it all turns out. But let me know if you guys have any questions about this. The chat has mostly been about booties. Oh, because Trisha A. Bigelow's booty. Whew. That was too much, but I'm here for it. How much do you love Kimberly Archie? Here's the thing. I don't have anything. I don't dislike Kimberly Archie. I've had her on this podcast. I've been very friendly with her. We've had a number of calls together and, where we've talked about things. My issue with Kimberly Archie came when she hosted an ice cream launch party that I was invited to. And in that launch party, Erika Jayne was also invited to that. And they were filming something with the LA Times that they invited Erika to come and sit down with some of the former clients of Girardi Keese, one of them being Kathy Rui Gomez, who's Joe's mother, Kimberly Archie. There was another woman, Nancy, who was a former client of Girardi Keese, or her husband was a former client of Girardi Keese. And so they invited Erika to sit down and have a conversation. I was told that it was for a project that the LA Times was producing, that they were doing some sort of, if my memory serves me correctly. I believe it was some sort of project about women taking down men that are causing corruption in our legal system. Um, Again, that's solely off of my memory and what I remember that project was sold as, or what that project was supposed to be. So I chose to attend. I brought my brother Ethan, who was with me because he was spending the weekend with me. I brought my puppy Sky, or well, my dog Sky. He was a puppy at the time. We came, we attended. I also invited my friend, who is a reporter at Page Six, because I thought that this would be a really big moment, and I thought it deserved some coverage. I wanted to give my friend the exclusive, so I invited him to come and join me to this ice cream launch party and to cover it for Page Six. I didn't tell Erika that I was going to be there. I saw her when I was there. It seemed like a lovely meeting. I spoke to the women after they spoke to Erika that day. Everybody seemed really good and happy, and they felt like they had some sort of resolution coming out of that. And then it was afterwards that then we all found out that the footage that was filmed that day, that was supposed to be that documentary that I told you guys about, or at least how it was disclosed to me, that then became that they took that footage and, unbeknownst to everybody, sold it to Hulu to create The Housewife and the Hustler Part 2. And so while everybody participated in that, I don't believe anybody was under the impression that this was Housewife and the Hustler 2. So I felt like it was disingenuous. Like, we got everybody to participate in this and participate thinking that this was, everybody trying to do the right thing. Erika's attorneys, I believe, participated in this as well, with the understanding that this was going to be a documentary that was not a follow-up to the original Hulu documentary, The Housewife and the Hustler. I don't think any of them would have participated had they known, considering The Housewife and the Hustler, was very much not focused on Girardi Keese, but focused on the scandal in relation to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. It was meant to be salacious. This is where I also took issue with the LA Times, because I'm like, the LA Times is a credible news source, that for them to cheapen themselves down to this level felt cheap. And I thought that the documentary was cheap because, as I just revealed, one of the key players in all of this is Christopher Camone, who is the CFO. Tell me how many times you heard Christopher Camone's name mentioned in part 1 or part 2 of Hulu's Housewife and the Hustler documentary. You don't. But they do focus a lot on Erika, and they show a lot of footage from the Real Houses of Beverly Hills. And my frustration comes down to holding the people that are accountable for the crimes that they were committing, right? There were people that worked at this law firm that were doing these things and knowing that they were doing these things, and yet we don't talk about them in the documentary. Can you talk about Marco Marco? I did talk about Marco Marco. We discussed that earlier in this episode. It is an ongoing trial. We'll see how that all plays out. But again, unfortunately, my perception of, those Hulu documentaries, they've become more salacious. And they're more about invoking, drama and getting people fired up about it, rather than they are giving us the facts. Because again, why are we talking about Marco in a documentary that's about Girardi Keese? How is Marco directly related to Girardi Keese if the focus is on to hold Tom Girardi accountable? Why are we not talking more about Christopher Camone? Why are we not talking more about David Lira? These are the men that are facing criminal charges. These are the men with trials that are forthcoming. But we're going to talk about Erika so much. I get it, she's on television, but to me, the frustration has always been, when do we get out of salacious tabloid world, and when do we hold true criminals accountable for the actions that we can now prove in a court of law that they've committed? Somebody was cutting those checks. Will you interview Marco to get their side of the story? That's a good question. I haven't considered it. I guess we'll have to see how it plays out in court. I don't think Marco would give me an interview, though. Yeah, I don't think that they would. And again, from what I've seen and read about the case, they admitted to overcharging. They admitted to, like, think of it. I've tried to break it down like this. When you get a $25 charge on your credit card statement, that you don't recognize that you then think is fraud, are you not immediately going to call your credit card company and say, hey, this is fraud, reverse the charge? We do that and we react when it's a $25 charge, let alone, $800,000 of expenses that don't have any invoices from. And it's easy after the fact to then say, oh, hold on, it's been years, but I just found the invoices. I found them all. They're all here now. Got them. It's a little suspicious, Netflix docs haven't been as good lately. No, I think the documentary genre started off really strong, and now everything's a documentary on Hulu, on Netflix. That's not specific to call out Hulu, but like, I just think the documentary genre has become more either tabloid scandals or, propaganda for one side or the other. We're no longer seeing objective reporting in these documentaries, which to me has been disheartening. American Meteorite fan says, I do hate to focus on her, but she's just as distasteful. But Girardi Keese was my family's lawyer, not Erika. And that's kind of the point, Listen, I've always said likability and culpability are two different things, right? I get that people don't like Erika. I get that they think that she's tone deaf or tactless or whatever. They can feel any way that they personally want to feel about her and her persona and her attitude or whatever. I'm not here to defend that. I'm only here to defend the culpability because it appears there is no culpability for Erika. But again, see, the conversation always continues to be about Erika when there are so many other players, in the game here. Pamela B says, I don't wish any ill will on Erika. I don't wish any ill will on Erika. I hope she is successful. Just have some compassion for others who are suffering and owed money. She has, though. That's the thing. There are a number of interviews. We often don't pay attention to these or gloss over them because we only like to focus on the scandal moments. But there are a number of interviews. There was an interview she gave with Bryce Sander for Entertainment Tonight. There was the interview that she gave with me here on this podcast where she does talk about it. She does have empathy for these people. But again, it's like if you were put in that position and everybody's trying to sue you, that's a really tough position to be in, So it's not that I don't think that she doesn't have any compassion, because I've heard her say that she has compassion and she feels bad and she wants anybody that was wronged to be made whole. She's made that statement several times on the show, off the show. If you go back and watch that season from 2020 or 2021, you'd be surprised at how much is acknowledged in that season. We didn't think of it at the time because I think most people went into that season wanting to believe that she wasn't being truthful. But as time goes on, when you rewatch those episodes, you'd be surprised at how much she does actually have compassion, and says that I want to know where the money went as well. I don't have answers to these questions. The only person that has these answers is him. Whoever was wronged, I want them to be made whole, but I don't have access to any of this information. Sarah says, all they care about is how much money they can make from viewing the show on Hulu. Yeah, I agree. Lori says, Tom should have told her it wasn't the best idea to go on TV when I'm doing all this shady stuff. I think Tom Girardi had a really big ego and thought that he was going to get away with it. I really do. I thought he was in control of it, and it was, he was always able to cover it until he wasn't. American Meteorite fan says, it felt to us, the families, like the show kind of glorified the theft. Imagine it being filmed, a bank robber's wife doing what she did. Well, we don't know what she did, but I do understand that point. Actually, we do know what she didn't do anything. But I would imagine that's probably, I'm sure, very traumatizing. That's why I do take issue with documentaries like The Housewife and the Hustler, because you're cheapening something that is actually real people's lives. There are real victims in this. There are real people that were done wrong by this law firm, and you're reducing their story to a cheap tabloid headline. That was why I was so irritated and upset with the LA Times. And that's where I took issue with Kimberly Archie for being complicit in, pulling the wool over everybody's eyes to produce a part 2 of the Housewife and the Hustler documentary. It was a cheap documentary. It was a tabloid documentary. And these are people's livelihoods. These are people's real lives that we've reduced and cheapened to that. Now, do I fall into that same category? Absolutely. But what I do is very different. I'm a podcaster. I'm a commentator. I am not the LA fucking Times, nor do I have the influence of Hulu, who have a responsibility to tell these stories in their true full light. And you know what? I talked to some of these other people. They won't go on record and say these things because they're involved in active lawsuits and whatnot. But I have talked to people that are in the process of suing Girardi Keese, or really big power players, maybe some of those names that I mentioned today, and they're also very disappointed with how Hulu handled that, you know? And these are people that are directly involved in this. Okay. Tom felt like he was above it all. That's right, Laura. Pamela says, I agree with Zach. Tom started feeling invincible. Listen, when you've been doing it long enough, you don't think you're ever going to get caught, especially not at his age. Joe says, once the jury is impaneled and the trial starts, would you attend in person to spill the tea afterwards? Possibly. I am in downtown, so it's not that far from me. The hard thing is they are very long days. I can't leave my dogs home alone that long. It's hot outside. I don't have a yard, so I do have to take them out to potty, feed them, go on walks, try to keep them active. And not only that, but my taping schedule is very busy. I mean, I guess now that Disaster Daters is wrapped for the season, I do have a little more time, but possibly I do have friends that go that give me updates, so it's possible, but these trials are very long. So Wanda says, Erika seems to know what she herself has done and what she hasn't. As long as she remembers that, I hope her mental health stays somewhat healthy through the turmoil. Yeah. Laura says, have you talked to anyone actively suing me? I must know. Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. Pamela says it's different as a podcaster. I imagine you have to cover what is trending. Yes. Brittany says she can't divorce him until this is over, correct? Yeah, all of that, like the Edelson lawsuit, Erika's divorce, all of that stuff is kind of put on pause until the criminal charges are seen through. American Meteorite fan says, I mean, Girardi was doing this stuff long before the show. Tom was above it all, but the feds got involved with that plane crash money he donated to everyone. Yeah. I mean, it seems like he did have a lot of people in his pocket. You're buying an appellate judge a new butt. You're going to tell me that appellate judge is going to be completely unbiased towards you? You bought her a beach house. I hope you and your family find closure. Oh, AMF. Yes, American Meteorite family. I hope you and your family find closure and move on in a healthy way. We support you, and I pray that you stay safe and healthy. Yes, I believe Jen speaks for all of us. Jen Johnson. I believe that is a sentiment we can all reflect. Joe, why don't you be our roaming reporter at the courthouse? Well, Joe doesn't live in Los Angeles. No, I don't think, at least. Joe, I believe you're in another state. So that would be a challenge to have him come all the way to Los Angeles just to film that, or just to cover that. There are plenty of reporters that are already covering it. Okay. What else? Any other closing thoughts, feelings, vibes, questions before we wrap? If not, then American Meteorite fan says he took judges on cruises and bragged about it. Yep, very true. Pamela B dropped a super sticker. Thank you, Pamela B, for the super sticker. Joe says, speaking of lawsuits, do we care to know about the lawsuits from the husbands? Are there more? I only knew of one. But again, other people's lawsuits are other people's lawsuits. I can say I am not suing anyone, nor am I being sued. So that's all I care about. All right. That said, thank you guys for tuning in to No Filter with Zack Peter. Gretel says, does Erika incur Tom's debts if he dies prior to their divorce? Possibly. But I would assume she would incur his personal debts. I don't think she would incur his Girardi Keese debts. But again, the trustee is the one that's handling it. There are two trustees. They're the ones that are handling all that mess. But that is a great question. I just don't have an answer to that because everything's still up in the air. But thank you guys for tuning in to No Filter with Zack Peter. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I will talk to you again on Thursday. Be sure to subscribe. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you enjoyed this episode, drop a comment below letting me know your thoughts of all of this legal scandal mess. I love you. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and stay tuned. Lots more I mean, the trial is just beginning, so we'll have to see where it goes from here. But thank you guys for listening and supporting. You can also catch new episodes of Disaster Daters and the Pop Report that are out right now. Subscribe, comment, like, review. All of those are really, really helpful, and they're free. So if you want to support the podcast, that's a great way to do it. Love you guys. Appreciate you. Talk to you later. Ciao for now. Bye.